Sarah Chen stood outside the entrance to Advanced Xenobiology, checking her datapad one more time. The door was twice her height, built to accommodate species much larger than humans. She took a deep breath and walked inside. The classroom was huge. Seats of different sizes and shapes filled the curved rows, each designed for a different species. Sarah counted at least 40 students already seated, and none of them looked even remotely human. Some had scales, others had fur or feathers. A few had extra limbs. One student in the back appeared to be made entirely of crystalline structures that caught the light. Every eye in the room turned to look at her. Sarah kept her expression neutral and made her way to an empty seat in the middle row. The seat next to her was occupied by a creature that resembled a deer. If deer had 6 legs and purple skin. The student shifted away slightly as Sarah sat down. A deep voice rumbled from 3 rows up. "Another human. They really are letting anyone into the academy these days." Sarah glanced up. The speaker was massive, easily 8 feet tall even while sitting. His body was covered in dark, chitinous armor, and his 4 arms ended in clawed hands. He looked like something between a beetle and a warrior. Sarah had done her homework. That was a Vraxian, one of the most successful predator species in known space. "Now, Korath," said a melodious voice. "The humans passed the same entrance requirements as everyone else." The speaker was the deer-like student next to Sarah. Her voice was gentle, almost musical. She turned to Sarah and dipped her head in a gesture that might have been a smile. "I am Lysara. Welcome." "Sarah," she replied quietly. "Thanks." "Silence, please," called a sharp voice from the front of the room. Professor Kessethar entered through a side door. She was avian, with golden feathers and keen black eyes that missed nothing. Her wings were folded neatly against her back as she moved to the podium with precise steps. "Welcome to Advanced Xenobiology," the professor began. "This course will challenge everything you think you know about evolution, adaptation, and survival. We have 47 species represented in this classroom. Each of you evolved under different conditions. Each of you solved the problem of survival in different ways." The professor's gaze swept across the room and landed on Sarah. "We have something unusual this semester. A human." Professor Kessethar pulled up a holographic display. "Humanity joined Galactic Society only 8 years ago. They are the newest member species of the Galactic Council. Their homeworld, Earth, is classified as a Class 12 death world." A murmur ran through the classroom. Sarah noticed several students leaning forward with interest. Others leaned back, as if the information made them nervous. "Humans are persistent pursuit predators," the professor continued. "An unusual evolutionary path. Most predators rely on ambush tactics or superior speed. Humans, however, evolved to chase their prey over long distances until the prey collapsed from exhaustion." Korath snorted loudly. "Sounds inefficient." Professor Kessathar's head tilted slightly. "Does it? Humans dominated their planet using this method. They reached the top of their food chain despite lacking natural weapons, armor, or exceptional speed." "Their planet cannot be that dangerous," Korath said. He turned to look directly at Sarah. "Look at her. Soft skin, small frame, no claws, no fangs, no armor. What kind of death world produces prey animals?" Several students made sounds that might have been laughter. Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she kept her expression calm. She had dealt with worse than this during her military service. "Mr. Korath," Professor Kessethar said sharply, "you will show respect to your classmates, all of them." Korath made a dismissive gesture with one of his 4 hands, but said nothing more. The professor continued the lecture, discussing classification systems and evolutionary pressures. Sarah took notes on her datapad, trying to ignore the occasional glances from other students. She had known this would not be easy. Humans were new, different, misunderstood. After class, Sarah gathered her things slowly. Most students left quickly, either ignoring her or giving her a wide berth. Lysara paused at the end of their row. "Do not mind Korath," she said softly. "Vraxians believe strength is everything. They do not understand other forms of power." "It's fine," Sarah said. "I've dealt with worse." Lysara's large eyes blinked slowly. "I am curious about humans. Perhaps we could study together sometime?" Sarah felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. "I'd like that." As Lysara left, Sarah stood alone in the emptying classroom. Professor Kesethar was organizing her materials at the podium. The professor glanced up and caught Sarah's eye. "Lieutenant Chen," she said. "Yes, I know your background. Former military." Sarah nodded. "Yes, ma'am." "The galactic community does not know what to make of your species yet," the professor said. Her tone was not unkind. "You are an unknown variable that makes many nervous." "I understand. Do you?" Professor Kesethar stepped closer. "Humans have a reputation already. Stories about your wars, your resilience, your capacity for both great kindness and great violence. The galaxy has seen many predator species, but humans are different. You cooperate on a scale most predators do not. You befriend other species easily. You are adaptable in ways that concern some council members." Sarah met the professor's gaze steadily. "We're not a threat." "Perhaps not. But you are certainly not what you appear to be." The professor's beak curved in what might have been a smile. "This semester will be educational for everyone, including you." Sarah left the classroom and made her way through the station's corridors. The academy was built into a massive space station, neutral territory where species from across the galaxy could gather and learn. Through the windows, she could see stars stretching endlessly in all directions. She thought about Korath's words. Soft, weak, prey animals. Let them think that, Sarah decided. She had not come here to prove anything. She had come to learn, to represent her species, to build bridges between humanity and the galaxy. But if someone pushed hard enough, well, they would learn what humans were really capable of. Sarah smiled slightly as she headed toward her quarters. This semester was going to be interesting. 2 weeks into the semester, Sarah had fallen into a routine. She attended her classes, studied in the library, and tried to ignore the stares. Some students had warmed up to her, others still kept their distance. Korath continued making comments, though Professor Kesethar shut him down each time. Today's lecture was about planetary classifications and how environment shaped evolution. The holographic display showed various worlds, each labeled with danger ratings. Sarah noticed that most of the students' homeworlds were Class 4 or Class 5. A few were Class 7 or 8. Then Professor Kesethar pulled up Earth. "Class 12, Death World," she announced. "Let us discuss what this means." The display zoomed in, showing Earth's continents and oceans. Statistics scrolled alongside the image. Gravity, 1.0 standard. Oxygen, 21%. Temperature range, extreme. Weather patterns, volatile. Native predators, numerous and diverse. Earth experiences regular natural disasters, the professor explained. Earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions. The planet has multiple climate zones, from frozen poles to burning deserts. It has gone through several mass extinction events. A student in the front row, a Zenth with gray skin and large eyes, raised a slender hand. "Professor, if Earth is so dangerous, how did humans survive?" "Excellent question. Humans survived through adaptability. They learned to live in every environment on their planet. Arctic ice, tropical jungles, high mountains, vast deserts. Name a place, and humans found a way to thrive there." Korath's voice cut through the lecture hall. "Class 12 seems high for a planet with such standard conditions. My homeworld has higher gravity and stronger predators." Professor Kesethar's feathers ruffled slightly. "Classification is not only about single factors, Mr. Korath. It is about the combination of challenges. Earth's danger comes from its unpredictability and diversity of threats." I still say the rating is inflated, Korath insisted. He gestured toward Sarah. Humans exaggerate to seem more impressive. Look at their size, their lack of natural weapons. They are not built for a true death world. Sarah had been silent, taking notes. Now she set down her stylus and spoke clearly. What would you like to know about Earth? The classroom went quiet. It was the first time Sarah had directly engaged with Korath's challenges. Tell me about your predators, Korath said, leaning back in his seat with a smug expression. We have several apex predators, Sarah replied calmly. Large cats that can break necks with their jaws, bears that weigh over half a ton, crocodiles that can drag prey underwater, sharks with rows of serrated teeth, venomous snakes and spiders, pack hunters like wolves, and more. And yet you defeated them all? We did, through intelligence, tools, and cooperation. Korath waved a clawed hand dismissively. Tools are not strength. I mean real physical power. Sarah felt a flicker of irritation, but kept her voice level. Humans can run for hours without stopping. We can sweat to cool our bodies, which means we can function in heat that would kill most species. We heal from injuries that would be fatal to others. We can throw objects with accuracy at high speeds. Our adrenaline response lets us temporarily ignore pain and injury. We can survive on almost any food source. Lysara spoke up from beside Sarah. That is remarkable. My species can run fast, but only in short bursts. We overheat quickly. My species is stronger than any human, Korath declared. We evolved on a high-gravity world filled with massive predators. We conquered them through pure physical dominance. That is true strength. Different planets require different solutions, Sarah said. Your species evolved one way. Mine evolved another. Neither is better or worse. Pretty words, Korath replied. But when it comes to actual survival, strength wins. Professor Kesethar stepped forward, her keen eyes bright with interest. An interesting debate, which brings me to your next assignment. The students groaned collectively. Sarah suppressed a smile. Some things were universal across species. Each of you will demonstrate your species' primary survival advantage, the professor continued. Not with words or data, but with action. You will show the class what adaptation means in practice. The groaning stopped. Students exchanged glances, some excited, others nervous. Demonstrations will take place in the Biodome Arena, Professor Kesethar said. You will have access to appropriate equipment and safety measures. I want to see what makes your species unique. What advantage did evolution give you? A crystalline student in the back raised what might have been a hand. What kind of demonstrations? That is for you to decide. Show us your speed, your strength, your camouflage, your senses. Whatever makes your species successful. Be creative, but be safe. Sarah's mind was already working. What could she demonstrate? Pure strength would not impress anyone, especially not Korath. Vraxians were far stronger than humans in raw power. She needed something that showed what made humans different. After class, Lysara caught up with Sarah in the corridor. What will you demonstrate? The Melodian asked. I am not sure yet, Sarah admitted. I need to think about it. Korath will try to embarrass you, Lysara said softly. He views you as a challenge to his status. I know. Be careful. Vraxians are proud. If he feels threatened, he may become dangerous. Sarah smiled slightly. I appreciate the warning, but I have dealt with bullies before. That evening, Sarah went to the Academy's gym facility. She put in a formal request to access the Biodome Arena for practice. The request form asked for details about her intended demonstration. After a moment's thought, Sarah typed, Human physical capabilities and endurance demonstration. She hit submit and went to the gym. Time to prepare. Over the next few days, word spread about the upcoming demonstrations. Students debated what each species would show. Bets were placed in the dining halls. The Vraxian demonstration was the most anticipated, with Korath boasting about what he would do. Sarah kept quiet and prepared. She ran laps around the station's exercise track. She worked on her lifting form. She stretched and reviewed old military training exercises. Lysara asked several times what Sarah was planning. Each time, Sarah just smiled and said, "You will see." The night before the demonstrations, Sarah stood alone in her quarters and looked out at the stars. Tomorrow would change things. She could feel it. The question was whether the change would be good or bad. She thought about Earth, about humanity, about all the assumptions the galaxy made about her species. Tomorrow, they would learn something new. The Biodome arena was packed. Students from other classes had heard about the demonstrations and came to watch. The arena itself was a large, circular space with a transparent dome overhead, showing the stars beyond. Equipment and obstacles filled different sections, allowing for various types of demonstrations. Professor Kesethar stood at the center, her wings slightly spread. "Welcome, everyone. Today you will see the remarkable diversity of adaptation in our galaxy. Each species solved the puzzle of survival differently. Remember, there is no single correct answer to evolution's challenges." The demonstrations began. A Zenth student showed perfect camouflage, disappearing against different backgrounds. The audience murmured with appreciation. A serpentine species demonstrated heat-sensing abilities, navigating an obstacle course in complete darkness. A small, furry creature showed climbing skills, scaling a vertical wall in seconds. Lysara's demonstration was beautiful. She ran a course designed to test speed and agility, her 6 legs carrying her with incredible grace. She completed the run in under 10 seconds, moving so fast she was almost a blur. Each demonstration brought applause and discussion. Sarah watched carefully, noting how each species showed pride in their abilities. This was more than a class assignment. It was about identity, about showing the galaxy who they were. Then it was Korath's turn. The massive Vraxian entered the arena to cheers from his friends. He wore minimal clothing, showing his armored exoskeleton and powerful muscles. His 4 arms flexed, claws extending. "The Vraxians are apex predators on 34 conquered worlds," Korath announced, his voice booming across the arena. "We are strength incarnate." Professor Kesethar gestured to a set of weights along the arena wall. "Please proceed with your demonstration." Korath walked to the heaviest weight, a massive block that read 400 pounds in standard measurement. He gripped it with 2 of his 4 hands, muscles tensing. Then, with a roar that made several students jump, he lifted the weight above his head. He held it there, steady and strong, before setting it down with a heavy thud. The arena erupted in applause and impressed whistles. Korath stood tall, accepting the admiration. His eyes scanned the crowd until they found Sarah. "That is true strength," he called out. "Built over millions of years of evolution, physical power cannot be faked or exaggerated." He looked directly at Sarah now. "Let us see what a Death Worlder can actually do. Let us see if humans are as impressive as their planet classification suggests." Sarah stood up slowly. Every eye in the arena turned to her. She felt her heart rate increase, felt the familiar pre-action clarity settle over her mind. This was it. She walked down to the arena floor, her steps measured and calm. She wore simple athletic clothing, her brown hair tied back. Next to Korath, she looked small, fragile, human. Professor Kesethar tilted her head. "Lieutenant Chen, what will you demonstrate?" "Human capability," Sarah said simply. She looked around the arena, at the equipment, at the watching students. Then she looked at Korath. "Professor, can my demonstration be interactive?" Sarah asked. Professor Kesethar's feathers ruffled with interest. "What do you mean?" "I would like to demonstrate with another student, if they are willing." The arena went silent. Korath's expression was smug. "I volunteer. Let us see what the human can do." Professor Kesethar looked uncertain. "Lieutenant Chen, what exactly are you planning?" "Nothing dangerous," Sarah assured her. "I just want to show what humans are built for." "Very well. But any sign of danger and I stop this immediately." Sarah nodded and turned to face Korath. He stood 8 feet tall, weighed at least 400 pounds, and looked like he could tear apart a tank. She walked toward him, closing the distance until she stood directly in front of him. "Vraxians are strong," Sarah said, her voice carrying across the silent arena. "Nobody disputes that. You evolved for power, for dominance." Korath crossed his 4 arms. "Correct. Humans evolved differently." Sarah moved to his side. "We did not become the strongest. We became the most persistent, the most adaptable." Before anyone could react, Sarah bent at the knees, positioned her shoulder under Korath's center of mass, and stood up in one smooth motion. She lifted the 400-pound Vraxian clean off the ground in a perfect fireman's carry. The arena exploded with shocked gasps and shouts. Korath made a startled sound, all 4 of his arms flailing briefly before he froze, too shocked to move. Sarah held him there, steady as a rock. Her breathing was controlled, her stance solid. She had done this hundreds of times in military training, carrying wounded soldiers off battlefields. Korath was heavy, but she knew how to distribute the weight, how to use her legs and core, how to make physics work for her instead of against her. "Humans evolved to carry," Sarah said, her voice clear despite the weight she bore. "We carried our wounded across deserts. We carried supplies up mountains. We carried our children for years while they grew." She walked 3 steps forward, still holding Korath steady. "We do not have the strongest bite or the sharpest claws. We do not have armor or venom. What we have is endurance, determination, the ability to keep going when everyone else has given up." Sarah walked 3 more steps. "Earth's gravity is 1.2 times standard galactic. We evolved in that gravity. Our muscles, our bones, our entire structure is built to handle it. Every single day of our lives is strength training." She could feel Korath's weight, but it was manageable. Her military training had involved carrying weights much heavier than this over much longer distances in full combat gear. Humans run marathons for fun. We climb mountains because they are there. We dive to ocean depths and jump from aircraft. We do not do these things because we must. We do them because we can. Sarah finally stopped and gently set Korath back on his feet. He stumbled slightly, all 4 arms out for balance. His expression was completely shocked. The arena was absolutely silent. Sarah stepped back and looked up at him. "That is what 1.2 gravities of evolution gets you. That is what 2 million years of persistence hunting creates. We might not look impressive, but we are stronger than we appear." She turned to address the entire arena. "Every species here evolved perfectly for their world. Vraxians are incredibly strong. Melodians are incredibly fast. Zenths are masters of camouflage. And humans, we endure, we adapt, we survive." Sarah looked at Professor Kesethar. "That is my demonstration." The professor stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly she began to clap her wings together. The sound echoed through the arena. The other students joined in. The applause built until it was deafening. All except Korath, who stood frozen in place, staring at Sarah with an expression that mixed humiliation, shock, and something that might have been respect. Sarah walked back to her seat. Her legs were trembling slightly from the exertion and adrenaline, but she kept her expression calm. Lysara was staring at her with wide eyes. "You lifted him. You actually lifted him." "Physics and leverage," Sarah said quietly, "plus a lot of practice." The rest of the demonstrations continued, but nobody was really paying attention anymore. Everyone was talking about what they had just witnessed. The human had lifted a Vraxian. The soft, small Death Worlder had carried an apex predator like he weighed nothing. Sarah sat quietly and watched the stars through the dome above. She had not come here to embarrass anyone, but Korath had pushed, and sometimes the only way to make a point was to demonstrate it directly. The galaxy thought humans were weak, prey animals playing at being predators. They were starting to learn differently. The arena demonstrations ended, but the talking did not stop. By evening, everyone on the station knew what had happened. Someone had recorded the moment Sarah lifted Korath, and the video spread through the Academy's network like wildfire. By the next morning, it had reached other stations, other worlds. Sarah woke to find her message inbox flooded. Interview requests from galactic news networks, questions from xenobiology researchers, messages from other humans scattered across the galaxy, some supportive, others worried. A few military contacts reached out, asking if she was all right. She ignored most of them and went to class. The walk through the station corridors was different now. Students who had ignored her before now stared openly. Some moved aside as she passed. Others whispered to their friends. A few nodded respectfully. Sarah was not sure which reaction bothered her more. In the xenobiology classroom, the atmosphere was tense. Korath was already seated, his posture rigid. He did not look at anyone. His friends sat near him but seemed uncertain what to say. Lysara greeted Sarah with a gentle touch to her shoulder. "You are very brave," the Melodian said softly, "or very foolish. I am not sure which." "Maybe both," Sarah admitted. Professor Kesethar entered and called the class to order. The lecture was about interspecies cooperation, which felt either perfectly timed or incredibly ironic. Yesterday's demonstrations were enlightening, the professor began. You showed the diversity of evolutionary solutions. But today, we discuss what happens when different species must work together. She pulled up images of mixed species crews, research teams, and military units. The galaxy is not separated by species anymore. We work together, live together, face challenges together. Understanding our differences is not enough. We must learn to use those differences as strengths. A student near the back raised a tentacle. "Professor, is it true that the Galactic Council is reconsidering humanity's classification?" Professor Kesethar's feathers ruffled. "Where did you hear that?" "It is all over the networks. They say humans might be reclassified as a higher threat level." Sarah felt her stomach tighten. That was not what she wanted. She had demonstrated human capability, not human danger. "The Council reviews species classifications regularly," Professor Kesethar said carefully. "However, I would not believe everything you read on public networks." After class, Sarah gathered her materials slowly. She needed to talk to Korath, but was not sure how to approach him. The Vraxian had been humiliated in front of everyone. His pride was wounded, and wounded pride could be dangerous. She did not have to wait long. Korath approached her as other students filed out. "Human," he said, his voice low. "We need to talk." Lysara tensed beside Sarah, but Sarah nodded. "All right." They found an empty study room down the corridor. Korath filled the doorway, his bulk imposing even in the small space. Sarah stood her ground, hands relaxed at her sides. "You humiliated me," Korath said. "I know," Sarah replied. "That was not my goal, but I know it happened anyway." "Then what was your goal?" "To make a point. You kept saying humans were weak, that we did not belong, that our world classification was a lie. I wanted to show that we are stronger than we look." Korath's claws flexed. "You could have chosen another way." "Could I? You challenged me directly. You wanted a display of strength. I gave you one." Korath was silent for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, He sat down heavily in a reinforced chair. My species values strength above all else. Physical power is how we measure worth. You carrying me like I was nothing. It shook my understanding. Sarah pulled out a chair and sat as well, though she kept some distance between them. Your species values one type of strength. Mine values another. We can chase prey for days without stopping. We heal from injuries that would kill others. We adapt to environments that would destroy most species. That is our strength. But you lifted me, Korath said, and there was something almost vulnerable in his voice. No one has ever lifted me. Not since I was a juvenile. I used technique and leverage. And yes, strength that came from evolving in higher gravity. But Korath, if we fought seriously, you would probably win. You have armor, 4 arms, natural weapons. I would have to use tools and tactics to have a chance. Then why do I feel like I lost? Sarah leaned forward slightly. Because you based your entire identity on being the strongest. And I showed that strength comes in different forms. That threatened your worldview. Korath's mandibles clicked together. A sound Sarah had learned indicated deep thought. What is human military training like? The question surprised her. Why do you ask? Because you carried me like you had done it 1,000 times. That was not natural ability. That was training. Sarah nodded slowly. Human soldiers train to carry wounded off battlefields. We run long distances with heavy packs. We learn to fight in any environment, any condition. We train our minds as much as our bodies. Your species has many wars. We did. Before we met the galaxy, humans fought each other. Nation against nation, ideology against ideology. We got very good at warfare. And now? Now we are trying to be better, to use our strengths for cooperation instead of conflict. Korath stood and paced the small room, his bulk making the space feel even smaller. Vraxians conquered 34 worlds. We are proud of this. We see it as proof of our superiority. And how did those conquests work out? Many resisted, many rebellions. The Council intervened. Now we are supervised. Korath sounded bitter. They fear us. They fear humans too, Sarah said quietly. That video of me lifting you, it is spreading across the galaxy. Some people see it as impressive. Others see it as threatening. That is not what I wanted. Korath stopped pacing and looked at her. What do you want? Understanding. Cooperation. A place for humanity in the galactic community that is not based on fear. You are a soldier. Do you not want to conquer? I was a soldier. And no. Humans have learned that conquest costs more than it gains. We want partners, not subjects. Korath was quiet for a long time. Then he extended one of his 4 hands. You have my respect, human. That is not something I give easily. Sarah stood and clasped his hand. His grip was strong enough to crush bones, but he was careful. Thank you. And my name is Sarah. Sarah, Korath repeated. Perhaps you could teach me about human military tactics. And I could teach you about Vraxian combat forms. I would like that. Over the following days, the situation on the station slowly normalized. Students stopped staring quite so much. The video's viral spread slowed down. Professor Kessathar assigned a joint project, pairing students from different species to research cooperative strategies. Sarah was paired with Korath. They met in the library, an odd pair that drew curious glances. Sarah brought human military manuals. Korath brought Vraxian historical texts. They compared strategies, debated tactics, and slowly built understanding. Lysara joined them sometimes, adding a prey species perspective. She pointed out that both predator species often overlooked defensive strategies. You focus on strength and endurance, she told them. But survival is also about knowing when to run, when to hide, when to avoid conflict entirely. Sarah had to admit she had a point. Word reached them that the Galactic Council was indeed reviewing humanity's status, not as a threat, but as a potential asset. They were impressed by human endurance and adaptability. Several council members suggested joint operations, using human strengths alongside other species. Sarah received an official message from Earth's diplomatic corps. They thanked her for representing humanity well, but also reminded her to be careful. Every action she took reflected on her entire species. No pressure. One evening, Sarah stood at an observation deck, looking out at the stars. Korath found her there. "Thinking?" he asked. "Always." "About what?" "About how one moment can change everything. I just wanted to pass a class. Now I am some kind of symbol." "Welcome to leadership," Korath said with what might have been humor. "It is uncomfortable." Sarah laughed despite herself. "Is that Vraxian wisdom?" "Hard-earned experience." They stood in comfortable silence watching the stars. Two predator species, evolved worlds apart, finding common ground. 3 months after the demonstration, the advanced xenobiology class had transformed. Students who barely spoke to each other now worked in mixed groups. The classroom buzzed with debate and discussion instead of tense silence. Professor Kesethar watched it all with satisfaction in her keen eyes. Sarah and Korath had become an unlikely team. They met regularly to study, their sessions evolving from academic work to genuine friendship. Other students joined them, curious about the human-Vraxian partnership. Lysara was a constant presence, her gentle nature balancing their predator intensity. Today, they were presenting their joint research project to the class. "Comparative analysis of strength across species," Korath announced as their presentation appeared on the holographic display. Sarah picked up the explanation. "We started with a simple question. What is strength? Most define it as physical power, but our research shows that definition is too narrow." The display showed various species performing different tasks. A Vraxian lifting heavy weights, a human running for hours, a Melodian outpacing a predator, a Zenth disappearing into shadows. "Every species is strong in their evolutionary context," Sarah continued. "Vraxians have incredible physical power. Humans have endurance and adaptability. Melodians have speed and awareness. Zenths have stealth and perception." Korath added, "What we discovered is that strength is not absolute. It is contextual. In a contest of lifting, I would win. In a contest of endurance, Sarah would win. In a contest of speed, Lysara would win." Lysara stepped forward, joining the presentation. "The question is not who is strongest. The question is how different strengths combine." They showed videos of mixed species teams completing tasks that would be impossible for any single species. A human's endurance getting a team to a distant location, a Vraxian strength moving obstacles, a Melodian speed scouting ahead, a Zenth's stealth avoiding danger. "Separately, we each have advantages and disadvantages," Sarah said. "Together we cover each other's weaknesses." The presentation continued, showing historical examples of successful interspecies cooperation and failures caused by species isolation. They presented data on efficiency gains, survival rates, and problem-solving speed in mixed teams versus single-species teams. Professor Kesethar listened intently, occasionally making notes on her datapad. When they finished, she stood and addressed the class. "This is what I hoped you would learn. Not that any species is superior, but that cooperation multiplies strength." A student raised a hand. "But Professor, cooperation requires trust. How do predator and prey species work together?" It was a fair question. Sarah had wondered the same thing. Lysara answered, "With difficulty at first. My species evolved to fear predators. Every instinct tells me to run from Korath and Sarah. But I have learned that intelligence can override instinct. They have never threatened me. They have protected me. It is true, Korath added. Last week, a group of students from a species I will not name cornered Lysara in a corridor. They thought it would be funny to scare her. Sarah and I intervened. Sarah remembered. The other students had been from a predator species that considered prey species inferior. They scattered quickly when faced with an angry human and an enraged Vraxian. Predators can be protectors, Sarah said. Humans evolved as social pack hunters. We protect our pack. Once you are part of our pack, we defend you. Lysara's voice was soft but clear. That is the difference between predation and partnership. Partners protect each other. Professor Kesthar's feathers ruffled with emotion. Well said. All of you. After class, Sarah received a message on her datapad. It was from Admiral Jang, the head of Earth's diplomatic corps. Lieutenant Chen, your work at the Academy has not gone unnoticed. The Galactic Council has approved a joint operation proposal. They want to create mixed species teams for deep space exploration and first contact scenarios. They specifically requested human participation. Would you be interested in helping establish these teams? Sarah stared at the message. This was bigger than she had imagined. Her demonstration had started something significant. She showed the message to Korath and Lysara. You should accept, Korath said immediately. This is an opportunity to shape how species work together. It is also a huge responsibility, Sarah replied. If these teams fail, it could set back interspecies cooperation for decades. Then we make sure they do not fail, Lysara said. Sarah, you showed us that humans are stronger than they appear. Now show the galaxy that cooperation is stronger than any individual species. Sarah thought about it for a long moment. Then she typed her response. I am interested. Please send details. Word spread quickly about the joint operation proposal. The Academy buzzed with excitement. Several students, including Korath and Lysara, expressed interest in joining the program after graduation. Professor Kesthaar called Sarah to her office. Lieutenant Chen, I wanted to speak with you privately, the professor said, gesturing to a seat. Sarah sat, wondering if she was in trouble. When you first arrived, I was skeptical, Professor Kesthaar admitted. Humans were unknown. Your reputation preceded you, but I did not know if it was earned or exaggerated. And now? Now I am impressed, not just by your physical abilities, but by your wisdom. You could have used your strength to dominate. Instead, you used it to build bridges. That is what humans do best, Sarah said. When we are at our best, anyway. Professor Kesthaar tilted her head. Your species fascinates me. You are predators who make friends easily, warriors who value peace, individuals who work as collectives. You are contradictions. We contain multitudes, Sarah said with a slight smile. Indeed, I am submitting a proposal to expand the xenobiology curriculum. I want to add sections on human psychology, sociology, and military doctrine. With your permission, I would like to use your demonstration as a case study. My permission? Professor, I am just a student. You are more than that now. Whether you intended it or not, you have become a representative of your species. How humans are perceived in the galaxy has changed because of you. Sarah felt the weight of that responsibility. Is that a good thing? I believe so. Fear is dangerous, but so is underestimation. The galaxy now understands that humans are capable. What you do next will show them what humans choose to do with that capability. Sarah left the professor's office deep in thought. She walked through the station corridors, past students of dozens of species, each going about their lives. She found Korath and Lysara in the common area, reviewing notes for an upcoming exam. Question, Sarah said, sitting down with them. Do you see me differently now than when we first met? Korath did not hesitate. Yes. At first I saw a weak prey animal pretending to be strong. Now I see a warrior who chooses cooperation over conflict. That is true strength. Lysara added, I was afraid of you at first. You are a predator. But you have never made me feel unsafe. You made me feel protected. That changed everything. So it is possible, Sarah said, for species to move past their evolutionary programming. It is not easy, Korath said. My instincts still tell me to dominate. But I have learned to listen to my mind instead of my instincts. Same, Lysara agreed. My instincts say run from predators. My mind says these particular predators are friends. Sarah felt something settle in her chest. Hope, maybe. The semester continued. The joint operation proposal developed into a full program. The first mixed species exploration team was announced, including representatives from 12 different species. 2 of them were human. Sarah applied and was accepted. Korath was selected for his species. Lysara chose to focus on research instead, but promised to support them from the academy. On the last day of class, Professor Kesisthar gave a final lecture. You came here as individuals from separate worlds, she said. You leave as colleagues who understand that the galaxy is stronger together than apart. This is not just academic learning. This is the foundation of our shared future. She looked directly at Sarah. Some of you will go on to shape how species interact. Remember what you learned here. Strength comes in many forms. True power is knowing when to use each form. After class, Sarah stood with her friends on an observation deck. Ships came and went from the station, carrying people to countless worlds. We did something here, Korath said. Something important. We learned, Lysara added. And we taught. Sarah nodded. They wanted a display of strength. I showed them what human strength looks like. But the real display was what happened after. We proved that different species can work together. Not just work together, Korath corrected. Be friends. They stood in comfortable silence, 3 students from 3 different worlds, bound by something stronger than evolutionary programming. Understanding, respect, partnership. The galaxy was watching. Humans had shown they were capable. Now they would show what they chose to do with that capability. Not conquerors, not victims, bridge builders. And that, Sarah thought, was the most human thing of all.